5 shocking X-rated Bible verses the church hides from you. What if I told you that some of the most important parts of the Bible are the ones you've probably never heard about in church? The parts that are too raw, too graphic, or too uncomfortable to make it into the average Sunday sermon. I know. Talking about shocking or X-rated Bible verses sounds like pure clickbait, but hear me out. The shock here isn't about finding dirty words in a holy book. It's about discovering that the Bible is a far more complex, more brutally honest, and ultimately more beautiful and dangerous book than many of us were ever led to believe. I remember the first time I stumbled into one of these passages. I was in my early 20s, fresh out of a faith tradition that presented the Bible as a clean, tidy instruction manual for a good life. And then I read Judges chapter 19. I was horrified. I was confused. My first thought was, this can't be in here. Why is this in here? It felt like a bug in the system, a glitch in the divine code. But what I've learned since then, and what we're going to explore together today, is that these passages aren't bugs. They're features. They're the unvarnished, brutally honest, and sometimes deeply uncomfortable stories that are essential to understanding the entire narrative of Scripture. They're not hidden by the Bible. They're often just avoided by us. So today, we're going to pull back the curtain. We're going to look at 5 of these stories head on, not to gawk but to understand. We're going to ask why. Why this graphic allegory? Why this erotic poem? Why this unspeakable violence? And what we'll find, I promise you, is more profound and more challenging than any Sunday school lesson you've ever had. Let's dive in. Our first stop is in the book of the prophet Ezekiel, chapter 23. And I need to warn you, the language here is some of the most graphic in the entire Bible. The story is an allegory about 2 sisters, Ohala and Oholibah. God says, "They were mine, but they became prostitutes." The text describes their lust in shocking detail. Ohala, the older sister, lusted after her lovers, the Assyrians. She bestowed her harlotries on them. The text portrays her as doting on the Assyrian governors and rulers, all desirable young men clothed in blue, symbolizing a complete embrace of Assyria's culture and pagan gods. But it gets even more explicit. Her younger sister Oholibah was even worse. The text says she lusted after the Babylonians, admiring images of their warriors portrayed in vermilion on the walls. And then, in a verse that is almost never read from a pulpit, it says she lusted after their Moors, whose flesh is like the flesh of donkeys and whose issue is like the issue of horses. It's brutal, it's offensive, and it's meant to be. My first reaction, and maybe yours too, is disgust. Some commentators have called the language repulsive and crude. Why would God inspire something so crude? To understand, we have to pull the camera back from the 21st century and drop ourselves into the world of the 6th century BC. The prophet Ezekiel is writing to a people in exile. Their nation has been shattered, their temple is about to be destroyed, and they are captives in Babylon. His ministry coincides with the historical events documented in external sources like the Babylonian Chronicles, which describe the sieges of Jerusalem leading to its destruction in 586 BC. The people are asking, why? How did this happen? And God, through Ezekiel, gives them an answer they can't ignore. You see, Ohala and Oholibah aren't just 2 women, they are code. The Bible tells us explicitly Ohala is Samaria, the capital of the northern kingdom of Israel, and Ohala is Jerusalem, the capital of the southern kingdom of Judah. They are 2 sister kingdoms, born from one mother, symbolizing that they were originally one nation under God. Their very names are symbolic. Ohala means her own tent, signifying that the northern kingdom's worship places were of their own devising, never approved by God. Oholibah means my tent is in her, representing Jerusalem, where God had established his true temple. And their prostitution, their harlotry. It's a metaphor, the most powerful metaphor for betrayal in the ancient world, adultery. But they aren't cheating on God with other men, they are cheating on God with other nations. Think about it. When Israel was threatened by its enemies, what did it do? Instead of trusting in its covenant relationship with God for protection, it tried to save itself by making political and military alliances with superpowers like Assyria and Babylon. To secure an alliance in the ancient world, you didn't just sign a treaty, you had to acknowledge the gods of your new partner. You adopted their culture, their worship, their idols. Archaeological finds like the Black Obelisk of Shalmaneser actually depict an Israelite king, Jehu, bowing down and paying tribute to the king of Assyria, a perfect historical illustration of this spiritual adultery. This is the adultery Ezekiel is talking about. It's spiritual and political infidelity. Israel was trying to serve two masters, to be married to God while sleeping with the pagan empires for security. They were taking the blessings God gave them, the gold, the oil, the fine linen, and using them to adorn themselves for their pagan lovers, just as the text describes them dressing up for the messengers from Chaldea. So why the X-rated language? Why compare the Babylonians to donkeys and horses? Because Ezekiel is using the literary tools of his time to shock his audience out of their complacency. This kind of intense, vivid imagery was common in ancient Near Eastern prophetic texts to convey moral urgency. He's holding up a mirror and saying, "You think your political maneuvering is sophisticated and wise. This is what it actually looks like. It's degrading, it's disgusting, it's a complete betrayal of the one who chose you and called you his own." The horror of the language is meant to match the horror of the sin. He's not trying to be polite, he's trying to be truthful. Sin isn't a tidy mistake. It's a grotesque distortion of what is good, and the story ends in tragedy. The very lovers, the sisters chased after the Assyrians and Babylonians are the ones God uses to bring judgment. They turn on the sisters, strip them naked, and destroy them. This isn't just a metaphor, it's history. Assyria conquered the northern kingdom in 722 BC, and Babylon was, at that very moment, destroying the southern kingdom. The brutal punishments described in the prophecy, forced migration, looting, and subjugation, matched the historical reality of Assyrian and Babylonian warfare tactics. Their punishment fit the crime perfectly. So, this first hidden verse isn't about sex. It's about the catastrophic consequences of trading ultimate trust in God for temporary security from the world. It's a political cartoon, painted with the most visceral and shocking colors imaginable, to wake a nation up before it's too late. From the brutal and visceral, we turn to the beautiful and sensual. Our next passage is from the Song of Solomon, or Song of Songs, chapter 7. And if Ezekiel 23 is shocking for its violence, this chapter is shocking for its explicit, celebratory eroticism. For centuries, many religious teachers were so uncomfortable with this book that they insisted it could only be an allegory for God's love for Israel or Christ's love for the church, and it certainly can be read that way. But to only read it allegorically is to miss something radical that the text is doing on its own terms. Listen to this. A lover is describing his beloved, from head to toe. "How beautiful are your feet in sandals, O noble daughter! The curves of your thighs are like jewels, the work of a master hand. Your navel is a rounded bowl that never lacks mixed wine. Your belly is a heap of wheat, encircled with lilies. Your two breasts are like two fawns, twins of a gazelle." This style of poetry has a name. It's an ancient Near Eastern form called a waf. It's a descriptive poem where a lover praises the beauty of their beloved, part by part. It was a recognized genre in Arabic and other regional poetry, often using extravagant and far-fetched metaphors, not to be literal, but to convey the lover's delight. We see it in ancient Egyptian and Ugaritic love poetry, too, suggesting a shared literary world. But the poem doesn't stop there. It gets even more intimate. The lover says, "Your stature is like a palm tree, and your breasts are like its clusters. I say, I will climb the palm tree and take hold of its fruit." Let's be clear, this is not subtle. This is an unambiguously erotic metaphor for the joyful, physical intimacy of marriage, and the imagery is deeply rooted in their world. The palm tree was a powerful symbol of fertility, victory, and life in the desert. To compare his wife to a palm tree was to say she was graceful, life-giving, and a source of deep nourishment. It speaks of her stature, both physically and in her significance as a sustainer. Grapes and wine were symbols of joy, celebration, and intoxicating delight. Later in the chapter, they speak of matrix, a plant whose Hebrew name is derived from the word for love, and was widely believed to be an aphrodisiac in the ancient world. So why is this in the Bible? Why do we have this incredibly sensual, very human love poem nestled among books of law and prophecy? Because the biblical worldview sees the physical world and our physical bodies as good. It's a fundamental declaration that God's creation is good, and the human body is a key part of that creation, worthy of praise. This stands in stark contrast to other ancient and modern philosophies that view the body and its pleasures as evil or something to be escaped. The Song of Solomon is a divine endorsement of passionate, exclusive, marital love. It's not just for procreation. It's for joy, for pleasure, for intimacy, for binding to people together. The fact that this was included in the canon is a radical statement. It carves out a sacred space for sexuality within the covenant of marriage, calling it beautiful, holy, and worthy of praise. The book even instructs its audience, the daughters of Jerusalem, to remain pure until marriage, underscoring that this passionate pleasure is designed for a specific, committed context. So while Ezekiel used the metaphor of broken sexuality to describe spiritual betrayal, the Song of Solomon uses the beauty of whole and healthy sexuality to celebrate one of God's greatest gifts. It's not something to be hidden or ashamed of, it's something to be honored. And that, in a world that often gets sexuality so wrong, is a shocking and beautiful truth. The next story we need to look at is, without question, one of the darkest and most disturbing passages in all of Scripture. It's found in Judges, chapter 19. I want to give a serious content warning. Here this story deals with horrific violence and sexual assault, and it is deeply unsettling. If you need to, feel free to skip ahead to the timestamp on the screen. But for those who are able, it's a story we have to confront if we want to understand the Bible's unflinching honesty about the depths of human depravity. It's what one scholar, Phyllis Tribble, famously called a text of terror. The story begins with a man from the tribe of Levi and his concubine, a type of secondary wife with fewer legal protections. She leaves him and returns to her father's house in Bethlehem. After 4 months, the Levite goes to persuade her to come back. On their journey home, they need a place to stay for the night. The Levite makes a fateful decision. He refuses to stay in the non-Israelite city of Geba's future Jerusalem, insisting. They press on to the Israelite town of Geba, in the territory of the tribe of Benjamin. He wants to stay with his brothers, but in Geba, no one will offer them hospitality, a grave violation of ancient Near Eastern custom. Finally, an old man, also an outsider living in the town, takes them in. But that night, the house is surrounded by a mob of sons of Belial, or base fellows, from the city. They pound on the door, demanding the Levite be sent out so they can gang rape him. It's a horrifying scene, and what happens next is where the story descends into absolute nightmare. In a desperate attempt to protect his male guest, the host offers the mob his own virgin daughter and the Levite's concubine instead. The Levite himself then seizes his concubine and thrusts her out the door. The mob rapes her all night long. In the morning, the Levite finds her collapsed on the doorstep, dead or dying. He puts her body on his donkey, takes her home, and then he cuts her body into 12 pieces and sends a piece to each of the 12 tribes of Israel. It is a gruesome, shocking call to arms that ignites a brutal civil war, nearly wiping out the entire tribe of Benjamin. How do we even begin to process this? Why is this story of misogyny, rape, murder, and dismemberment in a holy book? The key is a phrase that brackets this entire section of Judges. In those days, there was no king in Israel. Everyone did what was right in his own eyes. This isn't just a historical note, it's the theological diagnosis for the sickness that has infected the nation. Without God as their true king, and without just human leadership, society has completely disintegrated into moral chaos and anarchy. The bonds of hospitality, kinship, and basic human decency have dissolved. But there's an even deeper, more shocking layer here. The author of Judges is intentionally crafting this story to echo another famous biblical account of sexual violence and inhospitality, the story of Lot in Sodom, from Genesis 19. The parallels are stunning and deliberate. A host takes in travelers for the night. A mob surrounds the house, demanding to sexually assault the male guests. The host offers women as a substitute. But the differences are what carry the devastating theological punch. In Sodom, the guests were angels who miraculously saved Lot and his family. The host, Lot, at least put himself in harm's way. In Geba, the host is a coward, and the guest, the Levite, a religious leader who should be a protector, is the one who sacrifices his own partner to save himself. The system is so broken that the religious and social guardians have become perpetrators. This inversion of the hospitality theme is a central part of the author's critique. The message is terrifying. The author is screaming at us. Israel has become worse than Sodom. The chosen people, in the promised land, have become so depraved that a city in the heart of Israel is committing sins that once caused God to rain down fire from heaven. This isn't a story endorsing violence against women. It's a story using the ultimate horror of violence against women to condemn the utter moral collapse of an entire nation that has abandoned its God. It's a political polemic showing the horrific state of the tribe of Benjamin, the tribe that would produce Israel's first king, Solaz, a foundation for what is to come. It's a national confession of the highest order, preserved forever to show what happens when a people do what is right in their own eyes. That shocking parallel brings us to our fourth text, the original story itself, Genesis 19. Many of us think we know the story of Sodom and Gomorrah, but like the other texts we're looking at, The reality is more complex than the summary we usually get. The chapter actually contains 2 X-rated stories. The first is the one we've just referenced. 2 angels, appearing as men, arrive in Sodom. Lot, Abraham's nephew, insists on showing them hospitality, a sacred, life or death duty in the ancient desert. He gives them shelter, washes their feet, and prepares a feast. Then the mob arrives, demanding to rape his guests. Now, for centuries, this story has been used to condemn homosexuality. But many scholars, ancient and modern, argue that this misses the primary point. The Hebrew prophets who reference Sodom later in the Bible, like Isaiah and Ezekiel, condemn it for arrogance, injustice, and, crucially, for not helping the poor and needy, for a profound failure of social responsibility. The sin of Sodom wasn't just one thing, it was the complete breakdown of a society. But the outcry that reaches God, the sin that triggers the final judgment, is this act of violent, predatory inhospitality. I'd love to continue the conversation with you there. And if you want to dive even deeper into the complex, beautiful, and challenging narratives of the Bible, I've poured years of research into my books. You can find the link to them in the description below. Thank you for walking through this with me.